With support from the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, 10 artistically excellent performing arts organizations are working with Nonprofit Finance Fund to adapt their artistic, operating, and financial models in ways that lead to long-term health and vibrancy. This $15 million initiative, called Leading for the Future, is the first of its kind to deploy a specific kind of investment, change capital, to help organizations create and implement meaningful change.
Steppenwolf is using $1 million in change capital to revolutionize the way it attracts, engages, and retains young adult audiences. Some of the strategies they're implementing and exploring include sophisticated market research, innovative collaborations with small local theater companies and young theater artists, partnerships with area universities, and new uses of social media.
We're doing a number of things just at the level of research. Marketing department in particular is spending a lot of time looking at audiences, particularly that millennial audience, 20 to 35, and what their interests are, what it draws them to an experience, a social experience. And my particular focus, however, which I'll be better talking about, is working with the artistic department to create a couple of streams of artistic programming. So one is to work with local Chicago companies, smaller companies, in a three-company repertory where they essentially work with Steppenwolf at all levels of our staff to produce 3 shows in our garage space. And then the second project is a collaboration with Northwestern University and their theater department run by ensemble member Anna Shapiro to work with their MFA students in their final year, directors and designers, to put up 3 plays, another 3 plays in repertory in our garage space.
Right. So I'm curious to hear about, when we think about change capital, we think about taking risks and doing things that you might ordinarily not do.
Inside the organization, the risk is how do you bring an organization along to what are kind of entrepreneurial endeavors, because internally I think the organization is very much structured around 5 subscription shows, and I think it's been a couple-year conversation to really create a kind of buy-in within the organization for how we can do these projects together, because it really takes every arm of the organization to put essentially 6 new shows into the garage from about December until June. So,
well, I do think also a risk is one artistically, and one that we've talked about, which is to say, so now we have less control over, we have less artistic control over the projects in both of those, the Visiting Company Initiative and the Next Up, which is the partnership with Northwestern. So some people are receiving Steppenwolf through the prism of that work. It's just, I think that's a risk, right?
Yeah, I mean, for example, when we're working with the Chicago companies, none of them use equity actors, and we acting is the sort of the heart of the Steppenwolf ensemble. So I think we take an enormous risk of, are we going to like the final product on the stage, and how important is the final product and the sort of building of relationships in the process? And they're both important, and there's a relationship, but it's kind of figuring out how to sort out the priorities.
What would you say is the most exciting thing about the opportunity to have money that gives you some flexibility?
It has revolutionized the thinking of the organization in more ways than just specific to this project. Suddenly we were not thinking season to season, we were thinking in longer term. So I think in a lot of ways that's one of the best benefits, because it harmonizes so completely with with the actual lifespan of an artistic development process.
Yeah, and I think too, the idea of capital, of a kind of a capital investment, I mean, what it actually gives you, besides resources, it really gives you time to build relationships, and I think it's been so great in these projects to actually build real relationships with these companies, with these artists from Northwestern. It's kind of this long-term investment where you're not looking, at least in year 1 or 2, for what's the return on the investment in terms of financial, but instead we're able to look at what's the return of investment in terms of how Steppenwolf relates to its community, how its community relates to Steppenwolf, how we mentor the next generation of theater artists, how they mentor us. I mean, those are huge things that if we were just saying, what's the ticket outcome, you might not be able to make a case based on ticket sales, that these are great projects.
What would you say to funders who might be on the fence about whether investing capital in an organization is something that they're comfortable with,
I think it allows you really the time and energy to think about your relevance and to really think about how to stay to have a modicum of nimbleness to think about kind of future, the future of the organization. And I think organization Steppenwolf size, we really need that kind of flexibility, which if you're just in the executing of the day-to-day, you can't find time for. So this kind of capital, it seems to me, is about really sort of long-term health of an organization.
Well, I mean, it's creative disruption too, right? I mean, that's what it is. It says, particularly if an organization is successful and has established a way of doing business, it can be more perilous for that organization, at least in some ways of thinking, to innovate, because it's oh golly, don't disrupt this thing. Whereas sometimes that kind of agility is in the DNA of a smaller organization, and in fact they are probably more likely on the edge of peril. In fact, but their appetite for change and innovation is stronger.
So my last question is, what advice would you offer to your peers in the field about how to think about capitalization, how to think about change in their organizations based on your experience to date?
That ability to kind of create the potential for, disruption, I think is critical to arts organizations. And so I think that's, and that requires a kind of flexibility in thinking, and capital allows you flexibility in thinking. And so I guess that's where I would say, business as usual, I think ultimately, you're going to end up perpetuating yourself versus kind of, illuminating potentially a new path for an organization down the line.
Sure. Do you want to add anything to that?
Get someone to give you $1 million.
Get someone to give you $1 million right away.
And then counsel.
Well, Polly, Carl, and Martha Levy, you're great interview subjects. I mean, I'm so glad we got the time to do this. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you,
Thank you, Rodney. Yep.